Hello there. Just want to recap our week 3 readings, and theme for this week was getting the green light for your change idea. Uh, the first discussion question had to do with persuasion, right? And when pitching a change idea to potential sponsors, is it important to have a strong rational argument with lots of supporting data, or an emotionally compelling argument? Pick a side and make your case, persuade us. So that was the challenge in the discussion post. So to help us with that challenge, we drew on 2 readings, one from Cialdini, the Science of Persuasion, and Yuri's Getting to Yes, which is a book about negotiation. So you watched a couple of videos about that. Let me just share my screen so we can pull up a couple of resources here that may help. Right, so, right, there we go. All right, so this little visual map here summarizes what was in the video, right? And you hopefully you watched the video and you saw these different components build up. But to recap, there are 6 strategies that Cialdini and Martin focus on in their book, The Science of Persuasion, another really great book that you should have. Reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, and consensus. These are used frequently by marketers. They're used by attorneys. They're used by anybody who has to persuade others and make a case for things. And they're used in business quite a bit. So reciprocity, make people feel an obligation to give when they receive, right? So when you give folks, when you're trying to get them people to come along with something, make sure you've given them something prior to asking them for something, that you've built up some credit with them for having given them things in the past, whether it was good ideas, maybe it was some of your time that you didn't need to give, it was something extra that you did, something extra that you delivered for them, you responded extra quickly on something, right? You've done things for them that has created a sense in them that they feel they should reciprocate. Right, that you've gone above and beyond what's expected to give them something that's a little bit extra, and that little bit extra now is going to count in your favor as you go and make your business case proposal presentation, right? And you're going to be asking them for things, money, approval, so forth. Scarcity, people want more of those things that there are less of, right? And so if you can convince your stakeholders that your idea is somehow exclusive, it's somehow prestigious, because it is something that not many others have. So for example, you're trying to convince a group of senior stakeholders to invest in, I don't know, employee engagement. And you could talk about how, look, when you go out there and you look at the Glassdoor scores for different businesses, ours are right kind of where everybody else is. But we have an opportunity here to do something special that's going to bring our scores way above everybody else, and it's going to make us the employer of choice for the top talent, right? And we're going to be able to better compete with the most prestigious businesses to get the best possible candidates and best employees, best leaders into our organization. And those resources that we're competing for, the top talent, they're scarce. And if we want to get them, we're going to need to do something. We're going to up our game, right? And so by convincing them that that talent that you need is scarce, and indeed it actually is scarce, and it's not a very hard argument to make. But if you can convince them that talent is scarce, then it's much easier to swallow the idea that we need to up our game in order to meet the expectations of that top talent, so that we can bring more of that top talent in. So that scarcity idea is also something, a lever that you can work with to loosen people up. Authority, drawing on, you may have authority, or you may draw on other people's authority, bringing in experts, bringing other senior leaders in the organization to talk about what you're trying to propose on your behalf, to endorse the idea that you have already, to do that in advance, to talk about it, to whisper in their ears, whisper in the ears of those senior stakeholders or those champions that you want. Bringing in even experts through your presentation, right? Some citing articles and research that's been done by industry experts. That's certainly a way to bring some authority to what you're talking about, right? So that you have some backing, the backing of some authority figures. But of course, the people in the room have to recognize those as authority figures. So if you're saying, hey, you know, my cousin Bob, he thinks this is a great idea, the people in the room, unless cousin Bob is somebody, you know, important to them, is probably not going to be very influential, right? So it's got to be somebody they perceive as having formal authority. Then they will listen to your idea. Consistency. Leaders ask and advocate for commitments that can be made. And so you want to ask a commitment from your senior stakeholders here, your champions. And one of the ways you get them to commit is by asking them what's important to them. So maybe even before this meeting that you have with them, the business case proposal, you ask them what's important to you. And you make sure that your idea links back to what's important to them. And if you can't do that, you do it at the beginning of the meeting, right? After you've done your executive summary, and you may pose that question to them. Hey, as it relates to whatever the topic is, what is important to you? What really matters? What's your priority? And you get them to express those. And then you link your proposal to what they've said is important to them. And when they see that your ideas are consistent with their belief system, they're much more likely to adopt your ideas, to agree with them. So, so that's an important piece, an important strategy that you can use in your presentations. Liking. If they like you, if you're a likable person and you just like it and they like you, that's going to rub off on whatever ideas you have. If you're not likable, that also is going to rub off on the ideas that you have, right? And people will reject your ideas simply because they don't like you. It may not be fair, you may not like that, but that's just the way it is, right? Whereas if people like you, they might be more willing to cut you some slack and at least tentatively buy into your idea. So be likable. There are strategies for being likable, even if you're not a likable person. There are ways that you can make yourself a bit more likable in these situations. So make sure that you present well, that you look professional, that you are respectful of your audience and respectful of their time, that you project enthusiasm and likability through your presentation. And in this case, your business case presentation is going to be a recorded video. So make sure that that comes through. So when I watch it, I want to feel like I like you and I'm rooting for you and I want you to succeed. And in part because of that, I'm going to buy into your ideas a little bit more easily. I want you to manipulate me a little bit that way, okay, with all of these, all 6 of these. And in 6, consensus, people will look to take actions that others, the actions of others to determine their own. We'll look to the actions of others to determine their own. So this is a very common one that we use all the time with our clients, because many of them are influenced by what their competitors are doing or what their peer group, the companies that are like them, organizations that are like them, right? So if we were talking to, let's say even a government agency, let's say the CIA, if we're talking to the CIA, we're going to tell them, hey, you know, the FBI, they're doing this, and so is the DEA, and so is, you know, this, or the Brits over here, the MI6 folks, they're doing something very similar to this. And so then that's going to make the CIA folks say, well, if they can do it, if it's working for them, maybe it'll work for us. Maybe we should have something like that so that we at least keep up with our competitors or our peer group. And so there's that keeping up with the Joneses sort of mentality that plays into this. So I don't want you guys to become master manipulators of people. We want to build a good business case, but we do also need to persuade. And persuasion is not just about making a rational argument. It's also about tugging on the heartstrings. And so all 6 of these approaches have worked really well. People have been using them for years, and encourage you to try to incorporate those into your business case proposal and into your second presentation as well. So so very important reading. And then the second one, getting to yes, is all about negotiating, getting agreement. I won't spend as much time on that. That one's a little bit more self-explanatory. But the key thing I think that Yuri points out that a lot of us don't spend enough time on is 2 things. So one is making sure that we have room to negotiate. So when you are coming up with your solutions, you want to have flexibility built into the solutions, so that if someone says they don't want this or that you can't have that, it doesn't torpedo the whole thing, right? If you can't get everything, you should at least get some things, and make sure that you're clear on what are the core things that you really need to have, and then what are the things that are on the outside of that that are more negotiable, right? And that there's some wiggle room. And then you want to think about what are some different alternative ways in which you could implement things, so that there's some flexibility in your own mind as you're negotiating. So if somebody says, you know what, we're so busy right now, we can't implement this right now, and you can come right back to them and say, it's okay. There's some things that we can do to get things moving, and then we can push off the implementation date to this time frame. Would that address your concern? Right? And you can very quickly pivot, and without sacrificing the whole change initiative that you're trying to propose, and adapt things to those different people you're negotiating with. And then the second thing is really understanding what their concerns are. A lot of times people will raise an objection or raise a question, and we jump all over it instead of trying to really understand the concern that they have. What is the underlying issue? What really is the issue? What are the things they agree with? What are the things they disagree with? And why do they disagree with them? Once you understand that, then you can come up with a solution that can address their concern. So make sure you understand the other person's perspective. I think those are two very important things that come out of Yuri's video and from his book. So yeah, and then sorry, this is just another piece of that. Invent, brainstorm. Yeah. So the other piece is the McKendall article. So, Yuri and Cialdini help you focus on negotiating and persuading, respectively. McKendall asks us to think about ethics. What are the ethics of organizational change efforts? We oftentimes, in organizations, we do organizational change all the time and some things are big, some things are small, but it's happening all the time. We never really stop to think about the impact we're having on people. And we as change agents, before we commit ourselves to a certain course of action, we need to stop and think about that, because there are going to be all sorts of consequences that are intended and some that are unintended. We need to be prepared for that and understand that the reasons for doing this are really solid. The change that we are trying to bring about is something that really is going to lead to progress, and it's important and valuable. And there is no other way we could have done this than to do it this way. No better way, no easier way for people to deal with this. So those are some takeaways from her article. And I think coming out of it, one of the things that I would propose is that we, as the change management community, should consider having some sort of code of ethics that we espouse. And some ideas that I've put down, these 5 here are tenets that I would personally put in to a code of ethics around change. Prior to pursuing organizational changes, learn the facts of the situation, gather, analyze, right, and get diverse perspectives on it. I think that's a must. Only take on organizational changes that we feel are going to lead to a significant improvement, right? They're going to close and address a significant gap. If there isn't a significant gap, then maybe we should consider leaving it alone, because the impact and the cost involved, the human cost involved in organizational change, is significant. We know that, and so we better be getting significant payback for it in terms of the organizational benefits. I will always communicate change honestly, right? There's sometimes, in an effort to be kind of like marketing and sell the change, persuade people, we sometimes bend the truth and sometimes twist the truth around and lie, frankly, and that's not good. So, I think a commitment to telling the truth as it relates to change, telling both sides of it, to say, look, it's not going to go easy. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be perfect. We're going to have to work through challenges, right? And just being honest with people about the changes. I will make a concerted effort to anticipate and prevent or avoid negative impact, right? So we want to do no harm, just like physicians. And so to the extent that we can anticipate that, we should try to avoid doing harm. And we can't always see it, we can't always anticipate it, but where we can, we should try. And I will be proactive and transparent in my communication. So right? To be forthcoming with everybody that we interact with about what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. So those are, I think, just some basic ideas to think about as it relates to ethics applied to change management. I would encourage you to reflect on it and maybe come up with your own personal code of ethics, your own principles that you feel that you need to stand by when you are implementing change initiatives. Maybe plaster that on your wall or in front of your desk to remind yourself of that when you are engaged in these kind of activities. So, so those are the 3 readings for this week. You should be now getting ready, start putting the finishing touches on your business case proposal presentation and thinking about how you're going to make it persuasive and really make a solid pitch in order to get the green light approval from your champion. So so that should be happening. You should be in the process of that because your assignment's going to be due very soon. And you don't want to wait till the last minute for this. So make sure that you are working steadily on that with your team. So if you have questions, let me know. I'm around. Thank you. Take care.